$42.15. Those words hit Elena like a punch to the stomach. She stood frozen at the pharmacy counter, her hands trembling, staring at a pile of nickels and dimes that only added up to $37. Behind her, the line of impatient customers grew restless. A man in a suit muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, "We aren't a bank. Some of us have actual lives." It was a freezing rainy night, and she was $5 short of buying the flu medicine her daughter desperately needed to breathe. She was about to walk away in total humiliation when a large hand slammed a black Amex card onto the counter. A deep voice she recognized, her cold, distant billionaire boss, whispered a command that would change her life forever. But what happened next? No one saw it coming. Not even her. Now, before I tell you what he whispered, hit the like button if you've ever fought hard for your family. And make sure to subscribe so you never miss a story. Okay, let's go back to that moment. The hand on the counter, the silence, and the three words that changed everything. The rain wasn't just falling. It was punishing the pavement, a relentless, icy sheet that turned the city streets into blurred rivers of gray and neon. Inside the pharmacy, the air was stale, smelling faintly of rubbing alcohol and wet wool. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed with a headache-inducing flicker, casting a sickly green pallor over everything, including the face of the young woman standing at the counter. Elena's hands were shaking. They were red from the cold, the knuckles raw and chapped, but she didn't feel the chill. All she could feel was the burning heat of humiliation rising up her neck, staining her cheeks a deep, frantic crimson. On the white laminate counter, a small mountain of metal was growing. Nickels, dimes, a few quarters that she had found wedged between the cushions of her worn-out sofa earlier that evening. Clink, clink, clink. The sound of the coins hitting the counter seemed amplified, louder than the thunder rolling outside, louder than the murmurs of the impatient customers lining up behind her. Each coin represented a sacrifice. The quarters were the laundry money she wouldn't use this week. The dimes were from the jar she kept for emergencies. This was an emergency. Lily was burning up. Her forehead had been so hot it frightened Elena, sending a spike of adrenaline through her that had carried her 6 blocks in the pouring rain to this counter. 75, 80, 85. Elena whispered, her voice trembling so much the numbers barely formed in the air. She pushed a stack of pennies forward, her fingers fumbling. She could feel the eyes boring into her back. A heavy sigh drifted from the person directly behind her, a man in a business suit checking his watch. He shifted his weight, his leather shoes squeaking aggressively on the linoleum, a nonverbal signal that she was taking too long, that her poverty was an inconvenience to his evening. The pharmacist, a middle-aged man with smudged glasses and a name tag that hung crookedly on his chest, looked down at the pile of change with undisguised exhaustion. He didn't look mean, exactly, just done. He tapped his fingers on the keyboard, a rhythmic tap-tap-tap that felt like a countdown. "Miss," he said, his voice flat, "the total is $42.15. You're at 37. Elena froze. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. She stared at the pile of dirty metal, her mind racing, doing the math over and over again, hoping that somehow she had miscounted, that a $5 bill would magically materialize from her coat pocket. But she knew her pockets were empty. She had turned them inside out before leaving the apartment. She had checked the lining of her purse. She had checked the floor of her car before remembering the car hadn't started in 3 weeks. I think I have another quarter," she stammered, patting her wet coat frantically, knowing it was a lie. "Please, it's for my daughter. She has the flu. The fever is really high. I can't change the price, miss," the pharmacist said, looking over her shoulder at the growing line. "Maybe you can put the cough syrup back? That would bring you under." "No," Elena whispered, tears finally spilling over, hot tracks cutting through the rain on her face. "The doctor said she needs both. Please, I can bring the rest tomorrow. I get paid on Friday. I swear. We aren't a bank." The man behind her muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. A few people chuckled, a cruel, dry sound. Elena lowered her head, crushing her lungs. She reached out a trembling hand to take back the medicine, the bright red box that held the only thing that could stop Lily's shivering. She was going to have to walk out. She was going to have to go home and tell her sick child that mommy failed. The shame was a physical weight, heavy and suffocating, making it hard to breathe. Then, a shadow fell over her. It wasn't just a shadow, it was a presence. The air pressure in the small space seemed to shift, the oxygen sucked out and replaced by the scent of expensive sandalwood, cold rain, and raw power. A hand, large and tan, reached past her shoulder. It moved with the kind of confidence that doesn't ask for permission. A sleek, black metal card slammed onto the counter. It didn't clink like her coins. It landed with a heavy, authoritative thud. "Put it all on this," a voice said. It was a deep baritone, smooth as velvet but hard as steel. "And add the stuffed bear on the display. The brown one." Elena stopped breathing. She knew that voice. She heard it every day, echoing through the marble halls of Titan Corp, usually barking orders into a phone or silencing a boardroom with a single sentence. She turned her head slowly, terrified. Standing there, looming a full foot above her, was Adrian, the CEO, the billionaire wolf of the city. He was wearing a charcoal overcoat that was dampened by the storm, water droplets clinging to the dark fabric like diamonds. His hair was slicked back, wet and dark, and his jaw was set in a line so sharp it could cut glass. He wasn't looking at the pharmacist. He wasn't looking at the man who had sighed behind her. He was looking at the medicine on the counter. The pharmacist blinked, his impatience vanishing instantly, replaced by a fumbling deference. He recognized the card, even if he didn't recognize the man. The black MX, the card of kings. "Why, yes, sir. Of course. Right away." Elena wanted to disappear. She wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. She worked in the archives, in the basement of his building. She was a temp, a ghost in the machine of his empire. If he saw her, really saw her, he would see her shame. He would see his employee counting pennies like a beggar. She turned her face away, hiding behind her wet hair, praying he wouldn't recognize the woman who fetched the mail from the sorting room. The machine beeped. The transaction was approved before the sound even finished. The pharmacist bagged the medicine and the soft, plush teddy bear, handing it over with a trembling hand. Adrian took the bag. He didn't hand it to her immediately. Instead, he turned his body, blocking her from the view of the people in line, creating a wall of dark wool and protection between her and the world that had been mocking her just seconds ago. The silence in the pharmacy was deafening now. No one sighed. No one tapped their foot. The predator had entered the room, and the smaller animals were frozen. He looked down at her. Elena was forced to look up. She expected to see disgust. She expected to see the cold, detached pity of the wealthy tossing scraps to the poor. But his eyes were burning. They were dark, storm gray, and filled with an emotion she couldn't place. It looked like anger, but not at her. It looked like pain, deep, searing pain. He looked at her wet hair, her red hands, and the tears still drying on her cheeks. He didn't smile. This wasn't a happy moment. It was an intense, charged collision of two different worlds. He reached out and tucked the bag into her frozen hands. His fingers brushed hers, warm, dry, electric. The shock of the contact made her gasp softly. Then, he leaned in. He moved into her personal space, so close she could feel the heat radiating from his chest, so close the rest of the world faded into a blur of meaningless background noise. He lowered his head until his lips were inches from her ear, intimate and terrifying. "Call me next time," he commanded, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in her chest. "Not a bank, me." He pulled back just enough to slide a card into the pocket of her coat. It wasn't his business card. It was heavy and cream-colored, with a single handwritten number on the back in black ink. "Go home to her," he said, his voice softening, just a fraction, breaking the terrifying spell. "Go." Before she could speak, before she could stutter a thank you or ask why, he turned on his heel. The crowd parted for him like the Red Sea. He pushed through the glass doors and vanished into the rain and the night, leaving Elena standing there, clutching the bag and the card, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird, the coins still scattered on the counter, forgotten. Elena ran. She ran through the puddles that splashed icy slush onto her worn boots, clutching the pharmacy bag to her chest like it was a chest of gold. The rain felt different now, less like an assault and more like a curtain she was desperate to close behind her. Every shadow on the street looked like him. Every set of headlights that swept past made her flinch, half expecting a black limousine to pull up and demand repayment for the $40. She reached her apartment building, a squat, brick structure that had seen better decades, let alone better days. The front door lock stuck, as it always did, forcing her to jiggle the key with frozen fingers until it finally clicked open. The lobby smelled of damp carpet and someone's burned dinner. She didn't wait for the elevator. It had been out of order since Tuesday, and took the stairs two at a time, her breath hitching in her throat, not from exertion, but from the lingering shock of the encounter. Inside her apartment, the air was chilly. The heater was set to the bare minimum, a constant battle between comfort and the electric bill. Elena didn't take off her coat immediately. She rushed straight to the small bedroom at the end of the hall, the only room she kept truly warm with a space heater. Lily was asleep, but it was a restless, feverish sleep. Her small body was tangled in the sheets, her cheeks flushed a bright, unnatural pink. Elena's heart clenched, a physical squeeze of love and terror that every mother knows. She sat on the edge of the bed, her wet coat forgotten, and placed the back of her hand against Lily's forehead. It was still hot, but the rhythmic rise and fall of her chest was steady. "I got it, baby," Elena whispered into the darkness, her voice breaking. "Mommy got the medicine." She opened the bag. The brown teddy bear tumbled out first, its soft fur a stark contrast to the peeling paint on the nightstand. Elena stared at it. It was a luxury she never would have bought, a frivolous thing that cost as much as a week's worth of milk. Yet here it was. She tucked it under Lily's arm. Even in her sleep, the little girl instinctively curled around the toy, her breathing easing slightly as if sensing the new comfort. Elena measured out the dose of syrup with steady hands, waking Lily just enough to swallow it. "That's a good girl," she cooed, brushing the damp hair back from her daughter's face. Lily murmured something unintelligible and drifted back to sleep, clutching the bear. Only when Lily was settled did Elena finally step back into the living room. The silence of the apartment hit her then. It was a loud silence, filled with the evidence of her struggle. The draft from the window rattled the blinds. The faucet in the kitchen dripped, a metronome counting down the seconds of her difficult life. She walked to the small kitchenette and leaned against the counter, her legs suddenly turning to jelly. She pulled the card out of her pocket. It was heavy stock, creamy and textured. On one side, embossed in simple black letters, Adrian Vane, CEO, Titan Corporation. On the other side, in jagged, forceful black ink, was a number. Just 10 digits. No name. No instructions. "Call me." Why? The question circled her mind like a vulture. Why her? She was nobody. She spent her days in the basement of Titan Corp, filing invoices from 2015 and scanning contracts that no one read anymore. She was the woman who refilled the coffee pot in the break room when the executive assistants were too busy. She wore thrift store blazers and kept her head down. Men like Adrian Vane didn't see women like her. They looked through them as if they were made of glass. But he had seen her. He had looked right at her, with those storm gray eyes that seemed to strip away her defenses. And he hadn't just paid, he had touched her shoulder. He had leaned in close. A wave of shame washed over her, hotter than the fever. Was it charity? Was she just his good deed for the year? A story he could tell at a cocktail party to show how benevolent he was. "I saw this pathetic creature counting nickels, so I tossed her a bone." The thought made her stomach turn. Or was it something worse? A game? A cruel joke where the billionaire toys with the temp? "I can't keep this," she whispered to the empty room. She moved to the trash can, her hand hovering over the bin. If she threw it away, she could pretend it never happened. She could go back to being invisible. She could go back to the safety of the shadows. But she didn't drop it. She couldn't. The memory of his voice, "Call me next time," was a tether she couldn't sever. There wasn't any pity in his voice. It was a command. It was, promise. She placed the card on the kitchen table instead, staring at it as if it might explode. The next morning came too fast. The gray light of dawn filtered through the blinds, revealing the dust motes dancing in the cold air. Lily's fever had broken. She was cool to the touch, sleeping deeply. Elena called her neighbor, Mrs. Gable, to watch her, promising to pay her with a casserole later in the week. Elena dressed for work in a daze. She chose her most nondescript blouse, a beige button-down that made her look like part of the furniture. She pulled her hair back into a severe bun. Her plan was simple: get to the basement, hide behind the stacks of files, and pray Adrian Vane never came down to the archives. Why would he? He belonged in the penthouse, in the sky, not in the dungeon with the paper dust. She was just grabbing her purse when the sound shattered the morning quiet. Ring ring. Elena froze. Her landline. No one called the landline. Only telemarketers and... She stared at the phone on the wall. It rang again, shrill and demanding. It wasn't a telemarketer. She knew it in her bones. The timing was too precise. The air in the room seemed to thicken, just like it had in the pharmacy. Her hand trembled as she reached for the receiver. She held it to her ear, not saying a word, her breath caught in her throat. "You didn't call," the deep voice said. "No hello, no introduction, just him." Elena dropped her purse. How did he have this number? This was impossible. She squeaked. "The car is downstairs," Adrian said. "Don't take the bus. It's going to rain again." The line clicked dead. Elena stood there, the dial tone buzzing in her ear, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break her ribs. He knew where she lived. He knew her number. And he was waiting. The car ride had been a blur of soft leather and tinted windows, a luxury that felt like a trap. When the driver dropped her off at the employee entrance of Titan Corp., Elena practically fled from the vehicle, her head ducked low. She swiped her badge with shaking fingers and made a beeline for the elevators that went down, not up. The basement, the archives, her sanctuary. But the sanctuary was compromised. The atmosphere in the building was brittle, like dry twigs ready to snap. Even in the basement, the tension trickled down through the vents. The gossip mill was churning at hyperspeed. "He's on a rampage," whispered Sarah from accounting as they passed in the break room. "Fired 2 VPs before 9 a.m. They say he's looking for someone." Elena's blood ran cold. She poured her coffee, her hand trembling so badly a few drops splashed onto her wrist. She wiped it away, burning her skin, but she barely felt it. She retreated to her desk in the farthest corner of the archives, behind a towering wall of banker boxes labeled 2012 tax returns. She turned on her computer, burying herself in data entry, typing furiously as if the clicking keys could build a fortress around her. For an hour it worked. The rhythmic hum of the basement, and the smell of old paper and dust lulled her into a fragile state of denial. Maybe the car was just a corporate perk he gave to charity cases. Maybe the phone call was just an anomaly. Then, the heavy metal door to the archives swung open. It wasn't a casual opening, it was a breach. Mr. Henderson, the department head of records, stood there. He was a man who usually ignored Elena's existence entirely, but today he looked pale, sweating slightly despite the basement chill. "Elena," he said, his voice unusually high. "Leave the files." She stood up slowly, her knees knocking together. "Mr. Henderson? Is something wrong with the indexing? I can fix it." "It's not the indexing," he said, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. "You've been summoned." "Summoned?" The word hung in the air, archaic and terrifying. "Upstairs," he said, pointing a finger toward the ceiling. "The penthouse. Mr. Vane wants to see you." Now. The walk to the executive elevator felt like a march to the gallows. Her coworkers stared as she passed, their expressions a mix of confusion and pity. A temp from the basement going to the penthouse. That usually meant one thing: termination with prejudice. Elena's mind spun with worst-case scenarios. He thinks I stalked him. He thinks I planned the pharmacy encounter to get money. He's going to fire me for harassment. The elevator ride was agonizingly smooth. No creaks, no bumps, just the silent, rapid ascent that made her ears pop. The numbers on the digital display climbed higher and higher, 30, 40, 50, leaving her old life below. When the doors slid open on the 60th floor, the silence was absolute. The penthouse level wasn't an office, it was a cathedral of capitalism. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls offered a panoramic view of the city, the very streets she had trudged through in the rain now looking like toy sets far below. The carpet was thick enough to swallow her footsteps. There were no ringing phones, no clattering keyboards, just vast, terrifying space. A sleek assistant at a marble desk nodded to her. "He's expecting you. Go right in." Elena approached the double doors of the inner sanctum. Her hand hovered over the handle. She took a breath that rattled in her lungs, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. The office was enormous and shadowy despite the daylight pouring in. And there he was. Adrian stood by the window, his back to her. He had shed the overcoat, revealing a tailored suit that fit his broad shoulders like a second skin. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, looking out at the gray horizon. He didn't turn around when she entered. He just stood there, a dark monolith against the bright sky. "Close the door," he said. Elena obeyed, the click of the latch sounding like a gunshot in the quiet room. She stood by the door, clutching her purse, feeling small, frayed, and hopelessly out of place. "Did the medicine work?" The question threw her off balance. She blinked. "W what?" Adrian turned slowly. His face was unreadable, a mask of composed power, but those storm-gray eyes were locked on her instantly. "The medicine, for your daughter. Did it bring the fever down?" "Yes," Elena whispered. "Yes, it did. Thank you, sir. Mr. Vane, I have $40. I mean, not on me, but I can write you a check on Friday. I don't want your money, Elena." He cut her off, his voice dropping an octave. He walked around his massive desk, moving with that same predatory grace she had seen the night before. He didn't sit down. He leaned against the edge of the desk, crossing his arms, reducing the distance between them. "You've worked for Titan Corp for 3 years, he said, reciting the facts as if reading from an invisible file. "You started with a data entry, moved to archives 6 months ago. You have never been late. You had never taken a sick day until yesterday. Your performance reviews are perfect, yet you are still classified as a temporary contractor." Elena stared at him. He knew her file. He knew her history. "Your hourly rate," he continued, his jaw tightening, a flicker of anger crossing his face, "is criminal. It is barely enough to cover rent in this city, let alone raise a child alone." I manage," she said defensively, her pride flaring up despite her fear. "We do okay." "You were counting nickels for flu medicine," Adrian said softly. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of fact that shattered her defense. "That is not okay. That is survival. And you shouldn't have to survive. Not when you work for me." He picked up a folder from his desk and held it out to her. "What is this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Your new contract," he said. "Effective immediately. Personal assistant to the CEO." Elena's jaw dropped. "What? Sir, I don't have the qualifications. I work in the basement. I don't know how to. I don't need qualifications," he interrupted, his gaze intense. "I need trust, and I trust you." He tapped the folder. "The salary is triple what you make now. Full benefits. Health insurance for your daughter. Starting today." Elena felt dizzy. Triple? Health insurance? It was a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. It was salvation. But then, she saw the look in his eyes. It wasn't just business. There was a hunger there, a need to fix, to control, to protect. "There is one condition," he added, his voice hardening slightly. "Condition? The job requires you to be on call. 24/7 efficiency is key," he said, though the logic felt thin, a veil over something else. "You can't be commuting from that apartment complex on 4th Street. It's unsafe. The heating is unreliable. I've checked the building records." Elena stiffened. He had checked her building records? "Included in the package is a corporate apartment," Adrian said. 2 blocks from here. Fully furnished. Secure. "You and Lily will move in this weekend." "I can't," Elena said instinctively. That's too much. I can't accept housing. It feels like charity? He finished for her. He stepped closer, invading her space again, towering over her. It's not charity, Elena. It's logistics. I need my assistant close. I need to know. He paused, and for a second, the mask slipped. He looked almost desperate. I need to know you're safe. That she's safe. The air between them crackled. This wasn't about efficiency. This was about him knowing exactly how cold her apartment was and how unsafe the lock on her front door was. He wasn't just offering a job. He was building a wall around her, and she had to decide if she wanted to be inside it. No. The word hung in the vast, silent office like a stone dropped in a still pond. Elena's voice was quiet, but it was firm, anchored by a spine of steel that poverty had forged rather than broken. She clutched the strap of her purse tighter, her knuckles white. Adrian blinked. For a man who moved mountains with a signature and silenced boardrooms with a glare, the word no was a foreign language. He looked at her, his brow furrowing not in anger, but in genuine confusion. Excuse me? I accept the job, Mr. Vane, Elena said, forcing herself to meet his storm-gray gaze. The salary, the benefits. I would be a fool to say no. I need this for Lily, but I cannot take the apartment. It's part of the compensation package. Adrian countered, his tone sharpening, sliding back into negotiation mode. It's standard for executive staff. It's not standard to move a temp into a luxury suite 2 blocks away, she replied, her voice trembling slightly but holding steady. I have a home. It's small, and it's cold, but it's mine. If I take your apartment, I lose the only thing I have left that I earned myself. My independence. She took a breath. I won't be a kept woman, Mr. Vane. Even if the keeper is the company. Adrian stared at her. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. He looked at her frayed coat, her defiant chin, and the fire in her eyes that refused to be extinguished by his wealth. A muscle in his jaw ticked. He wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her that her independence meant drafty windows and a lock that could be kicked in by a stiff breeze. He wanted to tell her that he hadn't slept the night before, thinking about the cough he'd heard from the little girl in her arms. But he saw the line she had drawn in the sand. If he crossed it now, he would lose her. Fine, he said, the word clipped. He turned back to the window, his hands clenching into fists behind his back. Keep your apartment. But I'm sending a car for you every morning. That is non-negotiable. I won't have my assistant waiting for a bus in the rain. I can accept that. Elena exhaled, relief washing over her. Be here at 7 a.m. tomorrow, he said, dismissing her with a wave of his hand, though he didn't turn around. He couldn't. If he looked at her now, he might say something reckless. As the door clicked shut behind her, Adrian let out a long, ragged breath. He walked to his desk and unlocked the bottom drawer, the one no cleaner or assistant was allowed to touch. He pulled out a small, leather-bound sketchbook. It was old, the corners worn. He opened it to a page near the middle. It was a charcoal sketch, rough but evocative. It showed a girl in a cheap, oversized raincoat, holding a bright yellow umbrella over a man sitting on a park bench. The man in the drawing looked broken, his head in his hands. The girl looked like an angel of mercy. He ran his thumb over the face of the girl. Elena. She didn't remember. Why would she? 3 years ago, he hadn't been the Titan. He had been a 26-year-old boy whose father had just died, leaving him a crumbling empire and a legacy of debt. He had been sitting on a bench outside this very building, weeping in the rain, ready to give up. And she, a stranger passing by, had stopped. She hadn't offered money. She didn't have any. She had just held her umbrella over him for 10 minutes of silence, protecting him from the downpour until he stopped shaking. She whispered, "It passes. The storm always passes," and then pressed the umbrella into his hand and walked away into the wet gray city. He had kept the umbrella. He had kept the memory. And when he finally took the throne of Titan Corp, he had scoured the employee database until he found the face that matched the memory. He had watched her from afar, paralyzed by the fear that approaching her would shatter the image of his savior. But the pharmacy, seeing her counting coins, that had broken his restraint. The storm hadn't passed for her, and now, he was going to be her umbrella. The transition to the penthouse floor was like stepping onto an alien planet. The air was thinner, cleaner, and colder. The other executive assistants were sharks in designer silk. They looked at Elena, with her off-the-rack blouses and sensible shoes, like she was a stain on the carpet. "Coffee. Black. 2 sugars." "No," snapped Jessica, the VP of marketing, dropping a stack of files on Elena's new desk without making eye contact. Elena scrambled to comply, her hands shaking. But before she could reach for the pot, a shadow fell over the desk. "Jessica!" Adrian's voice boomed from the doorway of his office. He hadn't raised his voice, but the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Jessica froze, her smile brittle. "Yes, Mr. Vane? Elena is my personal assistant," Adrian said, walking over. He didn't look at Jessica. He looked only at Elena, checking her face for signs of distress. "She manages my schedule, my life, and my confidential matters. She does not fetch coffee for middle management. If you want caffeine, there is a machine in the break room. Use it." Jessica turned pale. "Of course, sir. I didn't realize." She snatched her files back and scurried away. Adrian turned to Elena. The hardness in his face melted instantly, replaced by a gentle, almost hesitant softness that no one else ever saw. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Elena whispered, awestruck. "You didn't have to do that." "I did," he said simply. "Get your notebook. We have a meeting with the board. Sit next to me." The days turned into a strange, dizzying rhythm. The work was brutal, high stakes, fast-paced, demanding perfection. But whenever Elena felt like she was drowning, Adrian was there. He shielded her from the toxicity of the corporate ladder. He patiently explained complex mergers to her in the quiet of the evening. He ordered lunch for 2, accidentally, ordering too much so she would have leftovers to take home to Lily. It was during one of these late evenings that it happened. Adrian had stepped out to take a call from Tokyo. Elena was organizing his desk, straightening a stack of documents. Her elbow bumped the edge of the desk, jarring the locked drawer. It wasn't locked. The latch had caught, leaving it slightly ajar. Curiosity, that dangerous impulse, took over. She pulled it open, intending to just close it properly. But she saw the sketchbook. It was lying open, face up. Elena froze. The breath left her lungs. It was a drawing, a charcoal sketch of a woman in the rain, holding a yellow umbrella over a man. The details were striking, the fray on the coat sleeve, the specific way the hair curled when wet. It was her. She touched the paper, her fingers trembling. She remembered that umbrella. She had lost it years ago. She remembered the day she had found out she was pregnant with Lily and alone. She had been walking in the rain, terrified, and saw a man who looked more broken than she felt. She had given him her umbrella because she felt like she had nothing else to give the world. She stared at the drawing, her heart hammering against her ribs. Why did the CEO of Titan Corp have a sketch of her from 3 years ago in his private drawer? "Elena?" She slammed the drawer shut and spun around. Adrian was standing in the doorway, his phone in his hand, his eyes narrowing slightly as he looked from her pale face to the desk. The air crackled with sudden, suffocating tension. But Elena didn't know the truth yet. Hidden in Adrian's locked desk drawer was a secret from 3 years ago. A drawing that proved their meeting at the pharmacy wasn't an accident. And when she finds it, it threatens to tear them apart. The moment was shattered not by Adrian's interrogation but by the buzzing of Elena's cell phone on the desk. The sound was harsh, insistent, and cutting through the thick silence of the office like a saw. Elena glanced at the screen. St. Jude's Elementary School nurse's office. The blood drained from her face so fast she had to grip the edge of the mahogany desk to stay upright. The drawing in the drawer was instantly forgotten. A mother's fear is a primal thing, overriding all other mysteries. She snatched the phone, her fingers fumbling. "Hello? Is it Lily? Ms. Rossi?" The school nurse's voice was tight and professional but urgent. "Lily has collapsed. Her fever spiked to 104. She's having trouble breathing. We've called an ambulance, but they're delayed in traffic. You need to come. Now. Elena's world tilted. The air in the room seemed to vanish. I'm coming right now. She dropped the phone. It clattered onto the desk. She looked at Adrian, her eyes wide, wild, and filled with a panic that stripped her bare. I have to go. My daughter, she's not breathing right. She spun around, grabbing her purse, her movements frantic and uncoordinated. She was hyperventilating, short, sharp gasps that yielded no oxygen. My car is dead. The bus takes 40 minutes. The subway is 6 blocks away. The logistics of poverty crashed down on her like a cage. She was trapped. She was going to be too late. She rushed past Adrian, blindly heading for the door, tears already blurring her vision. I'm sorry, I have to. A hand caught her arm. Not rough, but solid. An anchor. Elena. Adrian's voice was calm, a low frequency that cut through her panic. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't ask for details. He saw the terror in her eyes, and that was enough. He didn't look at her as an employee. He looked at her as a woman in crisis. Come with me, he said. He didn't wait for an answer. He pulled her toward the private elevator, his stride long and purposeful. He spoke into his wrist microphone as they moved. Get the car to the front. Now. Clear the schedule. Everything. The ride down was a blur. Elena was shaking, her hands pressed over her mouth to stifle the sobs. Adrian stood beside her, a pillar of dark stone. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He didn't say, "It will be okay." He simply radiated a fierce, protective energy that held her together. When the elevator doors opened, the limousine was already idling at the curb, engine purring. The driver opened the door, but Adrian waved him off and got in the back with Elena. St. Jude's Elementary, Adrian commanded. Drive like the police aren't watching. The car tore into traffic. Inside, it was a sanctuary of silence and speed. Elena rocked back and forth, muttering a prayer under her breath. Adrian reached out and took her hand. His grip was tight, grounding. He didn't let go for the entire ride. When they screeched to a halt in front of the school, Elena was out of the door before the car stopped moving. She sprinted into the building, Adrian a shadow at her heels. In the nurse's office, Lily was lying on a cot, pale and small, her chest heaving with shallow, raspy breaths. The nurse looked relieved to see them but terrified by the condition of the child. Mommy? Lily wheezed, her eyes fluttering open. I'm here, baby. I'm here. Elena fell to her knees beside the cot, stroking Lily's burning forehead. Adrian stepped into the small room. He filled the space, his suit and presence utterly incongruous with the construction paper murals and smell of chalk. He looked at Lily, and the mask of the cold CEO shattered completely. His eyes softened with a profound, aching tenderness. We aren't waiting for the ambulance, Adrian announced. His voice was soft but carried the weight of absolute authority. He moved past Elena and scooped Lily up into his arms. Lily, who was usually terrified of strangers, didn't recoil. She looked up at this giant of a man, blinked her fever-bright eyes, and rested her head against his shoulder. You smell nice, she murmured weakly. And you are very brave, Adrian whispered back, holding her as if she were made of spun glass. He turned to Elena. Let's go. The drive to the hospital was different. Lily was in Adrian's lap, wrapped in his suit jacket. He held her with a natural ease that shocked Elena. He wasn't awkward. He wasn't distant. He whispered stories to her about a brave knight and a dragon, his deep voice rumbling against the child's ear, calming her breathing. Elena watched them, her heart twisting. It was a picture of the life she had never had, a father protecting his child. They arrived at St. Luke's, the city's premier private hospital. Adrian didn't go to the ER entrance. He went to the VIP wing. He barked a name at the front desk, and suddenly, a team of doctors was swarming them. No paperwork, no insurance cards, no waiting. They whisked Lily away into a private suite. Elena stood in the hallway, the adrenaline crashing, leaving her knees weak. She slumped against the wall, sliding down until she hit the floor. Adrian was there instantly. He crouched in front of her, ignoring the crease in his expensive trousers. He took her face in his hands. She is in the best hands in the country, Elena. The best. I don't have the money for this, she sobbed, the reality hitting her. This wing, this hospital. Stop, he ordered gently. It's handled. Never mention money to me again. A doctor emerged from the room, looking grave but calm. He approached Adrian first, mistaking him for the father, then turned to Elena. She's stable, the doctor said. The fever is coming down. It's a severe viral pneumonia, compounded by a weak immune system. Elena let out a sob of relief. However, the doctor continued, looking at his clipboard. During the blood work, we noticed something unusual, a genetic marker. It's rare, usually hereditary. He looked at Elena. Does the father have a history of autoimmune disorders, specifically the Vane-Kessler syndrome? The air in the hallway froze. Elena looked confused. I don't know. Her father left before she was born. I don't know his medical history. But Adrian had gone deathly pale. He stood up slowly, his eyes locked on the doctor. The color drained from his lips. Vane-Kessler syndrome. It was a made-up name to the rest of the world, but to him, it was a ghost. It was the condition that had killed his grandfather. It was the marker carried by his bloodline, his family. He looked at the closed door where Lily lay sleeping. Then he looked at Elena, really looked at her, searching her face for a resemblance he had been too blind to see before. The timeline, 3 years ago. The elevator. The night they had met, the night of the umbrella. There had been a moment, hadn't there? A moment of shared grief that had blurred into something else? No. He had been drunk on sorrow. He had blacked out parts of that night. Adrian? Elena asked, noticing his silence. Are you okay? He looked at her, his eyes wide with a dawning, terrifying realization. I need to make a call, he rasped. He turned and walked down the hall, his steps heavy, his world spinning off its axis. He didn't call anyone. He just leaned against the window at the end of the corridor, staring at his reflection, whispering one word over and over. Impossible. Lily was released 3 days later. The bill never came. When Elena asked the discharge nurse about it, the woman simply smiled and said, Mr. Vane took care of everything, including the follow-up appointments for the next 6 months. Elena walked out of the hospital with Lily in her arms, feeling a weight in her chest that was heavier than fear. It was gratitude, yes, but it was also a crushing sense of indebtedness. She owed him her daughter's life. She owed him her job. She owed him her dignity. The balance of power between them was so skewed it was dizzying. She had to do something. She couldn't pay him back in money. He had made that clear. But she couldn't just take and take. Her pride, battered as it was, wouldn't allow it. The following Friday, she walked into his office. He was staring at a tablet, his brow furrowed, but he looked up the moment she entered. The intensity of his gaze hadn't lessened since the hospital. If anything, it had grown more complex, more searching. Mr. Vane, she started, her hands clasped in front of her. I want to thank you. Properly. He waved a hand dismissively. It's not necessary. It is to me, she insisted. I can't offer you much, but I can cook. My grandmother's lasagna. It's good. I'd like to invite you to dinner. At my place. Tonight. Adrian froze. He looked at her, really looked at her. A dinner invitation? To her apartment? In his world, dinner meant reservations at Michelin-starred restaurants where the portions were tiny and the conversation was transactional. It meant networking. It meant being on display. You don't have to do that, he said softly. I know, Elena replied. But I want to. Please, let me do this one thing. He hesitated, then nodded. What time? 7? I'll be there. At 7 p.m. sharp, a knock echoed on Elena's door. Not the aggressive pounding of the landlord looking for rent, but a firm, respectful rap. Elena smoothed her apron and opened the door. Adrian stood in the hallway. He looked impossibly out of place. The peeling wallpaper of the corridor and the flickering fluorescent bulb overhead seemed to shrink in his presence. He had ditched the tie, his top button undone, holding a bottle of wine that probably cost more than her car. Am I underdressed? He asked, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. You're perfect, Elena blurted out, then blushed furiously. I mean, come in. He stepped into her apartment. It was the first time he had been inside. The space was tiny. The living room and kitchen were one room. The furniture was mismatched. A plaid sofa from a thrift store, a wobbly coffee table, and a bookshelf made of cinder blocks and planks. But it was clean. It smelled of garlic, tomatoes, and warmth. "It's not much," Elena said, taking his coat. "It's a home," Adrian corrected her. He walked over to the small table set for two. The plates were chipped. The silverware didn't match. But there was a small vase with wildflowers in the center. They sat. The lasagna was hot, bubbling with cheese. Adrian took a bite, and his eyes closed. "My God," he murmured. I haven't had a meal like this in years." "You must eat at amazing places all the time," Elena said, pouring the wine into simple tumblers. "I eat at expensive places," he corrected. "It's not the same." They ate in a comfortable silence that slowly filled with conversation. They didn't talk about work. They didn't talk about Titan Corporation. They talked about books, about the rain, about Lily, who was asleep in the other room. But as the meal went on, Adrian's eyes began to wander. He wasn't judging, he was assessing. He saw the bucket in the corner catching a slow drip from the ceiling. He saw the towel jammed under the windowsill to stop the draft that was making the curtains flutter. He saw the way Elena shivered slightly, even in her sweater. His jaw tightened. The coziness of the meal couldn't mask the harsh reality of her poverty. This wasn't charming. It was dangerous. It was a struggle no one should have to endure, let alone the woman who... He put down his fork. "Elena." "Yes?" She looked up, sensing the shift in his mood. "Lily's father," he said. The question was abrupt and heavy. "Where is he?" Elena looked down at her plate. She had expected this eventually. "He's gone." "Dead?" "No," she said bitterly. "Just gone. We met briefly, a few years ago. I thought he was someone else, someone kind. But when I told him I was pregnant, he changed. He said he wasn't ready for baggage. He gave me $500 for an abortion and told me to lose his number." The glass in Adrian's hand cracked. Elena jumped. "Adrian!" He looked down at the wine glass, now spiderwebbed with fractures in his grip. He carefully set it down, his hand shaking with suppressed rage. Not at her. At the man. At the phantom who had abandoned them. "He left you?" Adrian's voice was a low growl. "He left you alone? With her?" "He didn't want us," Elena whispered. "It's okay. We're better off." "It is not okay," Adrian said. He stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. He paced the small room, his energy too big for the space. He walked to the window and touched the damp towel. He looked at the bucket. "You shouldn't be living like this," he said, his back to her. "Leaky roofs, drafts, counting coins. It's unacceptable." "It's my life, Adrian," Elena said, standing up too. "I'm doing the best I can." "I know you are." He turned to her, his eyes blazing. "You are incredible. You are the strongest person I know. But you don't have to be strong alone anymore." He walked over to her. The distance between them vanished. He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her cheek. The touch was electric, intimate, and terrifying. It wasn't the touch of a boss. It was the touch of a man who was claiming something precious. "I can't fix the past," he whispered, looking into her eyes. "I can't bring him back to make him pay. But I can fix it now." "Adrian, please," Elena breathed, her heart racing. "You've done enough." "I haven't even started," he murmured. He stared at her lips for a second, a moment of infinite possibility, before pulling back. He grabbed his coat. "Thank you for dinner. It was the best meal I've ever had." He moved to the door. Before he opened it, he turned back. The shadows of the hallway framed him, making him look like a dark guardian. "I won't let you struggle anymore, Elena," he said. The promise hung in the air, heavy and absolute. "Sleep well." He left. Elena stood in the center of her kitchen, touching her cheek where his hand had been. She felt safe. For the first time in years, she felt safe. She cleaned up the dishes, humming a soft tune, and went to bed, dreaming of storm-gray eyes. She was woken up at 6 a.m. by a sound that shook the building. Brrrr. It was the roar of heavy machinery, shouting, the beep 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 of trucks backing up. Elena scrambled out of bed, grabbing her robe. She rushed to the window and threw open the blinds. Down on the street, it looked like an invasion. 3 massive construction trucks were idling. Scaffolding was already going up the side of the building. A team of men in hard hats with the Titan Corp logo was swarming the entrance, and there, standing in the middle of the chaos, pointing at the roof and shouting orders to a foreman, was Adrian. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. He hadn't just called a plumber. He had called an army. The noise was deafening, but it was the sight at the curb that truly silenced Elena's thoughts. Parked directly in front of the fire hydrant, a spot no one dared take, was a brand new, pearl-white SUV. A man in a jumpsuit was attaching license plates. He looked up, saw Elena in the window, and gave a cheerful thumbs up. Elena didn't wave back. She let the blind snap shut, her chest heaving. This wasn't kind. This was a takeover. She dressed in record time, fury fueling every button she fastened. She didn't wait for the company car. She stormed downstairs, ignoring the construction crew that was already ripping out the rotted front steps to replace them with stone. "Morning, miss!" the foreman called out, tipping his hard hat. "Mr. Vane said to tell you the new heating system will be online by noon. No more cold nights. Where is he?" Elena demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut steel. "Mr. Vane?" He headed to the office. Said he had a meeting. Elena didn't take the new SUV. She didn't even look at the keys the man tried to hand her. She walked 3 blocks to the subway, her anger building with every step. By the time she reached Titan Corp, she wasn't just mad, she was incandescent. She bypassed the security desk, flashing her badge without breaking stride. She ignored the other assistants. She marched straight to the double doors of the CEO's office and threw them open. Adrian was in the middle of a video conference with investors in London. He looked up, surprised, as Elena slammed the door shut behind her, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Get out," she said to the screen. Adrian didn't blink. He calmly reached over and tapped a button. "Gentlemen, we will reconvene in 10 minutes. The screen went black. He stood up, his face impassive but his eyes wary. "Elena, I assume the construction crew arrived on time? You bought my building," she accused, walking toward his desk, her hands trembling with rage. "You bought the whole damn building, Adrian. And a car? A brand new car sitting on the street? The building was structurally unsound," he said calmly, as if discussing a merger. "The landlord was a slumlord. I bought the property to ensure safety standards were met. And the car, yours, was unreliable. You have a child. Reliability is non-negotiable." "Stop!" she yelled. It was the first time she had ever raised her voice at him. "Stop managing my life like it's a failing subsidiary. I am a person, Adrian. I am your employee. I am not your pet project. I am not a charity case you can just throw money at until you feel better about yourself." "It's not charity," he said, his voice tightening. "It feels like charity," she cried, tears of frustration stinging her eyes. "It feels like you're buying me. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? To have the boss swoop in and fix everything because poor, pathetic Elena can't handle it herself? I was handling it. I was surviving. You were drowning." Adrian roared back. His control snapped. The calm facade shattered. He slammed his hand on the desk, the sound making her jump. "You were counting pennies for medicine. You were freezing in a broken apartment. That is not surviving, Elena. That is suffering. And I will not watch you suffer. Why do you care?" she screamed back. "Why me? There are thousands of struggling mothers in this city. Why are you so obsessed with me?" "Because you saved me." The words ripped out of him, raw and desperate. They hung in the air between them, vibrating with intensity. Elena froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "What?" Adrian breathed heavily, his chest rising and falling. He looked at her, his eyes wide, stripped of all their usual armor. He looked suddenly young, vulnerable. 3 years ago, he said, his voice dropping to a ragged whisper. "November 14th. It was raining, just like the other night. I was 26. My father had just died. The board were circling like vultures. I was millions in debt. I was going to lose everything. He walked around the desk, moving slowly toward her. I was sitting on the bench outside the plaza. I was ready to end it, Elena. I had the pills in my pocket. I was just waiting for the courage. Elena's hand went to her mouth. The memory sparked. A gray day. A man on a bench. He had been hunched over, shaking. She had thought he was sick. You stopped. Adrian continued, his eyes locked on hers. You didn't know who I was. I was just a stranger crying in the rain. You stopped. You stood over me with your yellow umbrella. You didn't ask questions. You just stood there and kept me dry. You told me. Storms run out of rain eventually. Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks. She remembered. She had been pregnant, terrified, and alone. Helping him had been the only moment of control she'd had that day. You gave me the umbrella, Adrian whispered, standing right in front of her now. And you walked away. That umbrella, it was the only thing protecting you, and you gave it to me. I went back to the office. I threw the pills away. I fought back. I saved the company. Because of you. I didn't know. She whispered. I have been looking for you for 3 years, he said. When I saw you in the pharmacy, when I saw you struggling, it broke me. It's not charity, Elena. It's penance. It's a debt I can never repay. You saved my life. The least I can do is fix your faucet. The anger drained out of her, replaced by a profound, aching shock. He wasn't the billionaire savior. He was the broken boy on the bench. And she wasn't the charity case. She was the hero of his story. Adrian. She breathed, reaching out to touch his arm. He leaned into her touch, closing his eyes. I'm sorry if I overstepped. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to care for someone without using money. It's the only tool I have. You have more than that, she said softly. The moment was fragile and beautiful. The barriers between boss and employee and rich and poor were dissolving. But the world outside the office hadn't stopped turning. The door to the office opened abruptly. They sprang apart. It was Jessica, the VP of marketing, her face pale. Mr. Vane, she said, her voice trembling. We have a problem. A big one. Not now, Jessica. Adrian snapped, composing himself. It can't wait, sir, she said, holding up a tablet. It's everywhere. The gossip sites. The company intranet. Adrian snatched the tablet. Elena looked over his shoulder. On the screen was a grainy photo taken through the window of Elena's apartment the night before. It showed Adrian and Elena at her small kitchen table. He was touching her face. The intimacy was undeniable. The headline screamed, "The billionaire and the secretary, CEO caught in love nest with subordinate." Below it, the comments were vicious. Gold digger. She slept her way to the top. Look at that apartment. Trash trying to trap a king. And then, a second headline, even worse. HR investigation launched. Misuse of company funds for mistress? Adrian went cold. The tenderness vanished, replaced by the terrifying, cold fury of the Titan. Who took this? We don't know, Jessica whispered, but the board has called an emergency meeting. They're talking about ethics violations. They want her gone, Adrian. Today. Elena backed away, her hands shaking again. The bubble had burst. The reality of their different worlds had come crashing back in, armed with cameras and malice. I have to go, she stammered. Elena, wait. Adrian reached for her. No, she cried, backing toward the door. Look at it, Adrian. They're right. I'm running you. I can't be here. She turned and ran. This time, he couldn't stop her. The phone on his desk began to ring, a relentless, screaming alarm signaling the beginning of a war. Adrian thought he was saving her, but he had just made a fatal calculation. By morning, a scandal would break that wouldn't just ruin his company. It would force Elena to make a heartbreaking choice to disappear forever. Elena didn't make it to the elevator. She was intercepted in the executive lounge, a plush waiting area that suddenly felt like a cage. Ms. Rossi. The voice was cool, cultured, and laced with venom. Elena turned to see Victoria Vance, the daughter of the chairman of the board. Victoria was everything Elena wasn't, polished, impeccably dressed in Chanel, and radiating the easy confidence of someone who had never worried about a grocery bill in her life. She had been circling Adrian for years, a match that high society deemed inevitable. "Victoria," Elena said, hugging her purse to her chest. "I was just leaving." "Good," Victoria said, stepping closer. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her cruelty was precise, like a scalpel. "Because this little charade is over." She held up her phone, displaying the scandal headlines. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Adrian's stock dropped 3 points this morning." 3 points. That's millions of dollars gone. Because he was photographed playing house in a slum. It wasn't like that. Elena defended weakly. He was helping me. He's a good man. He's a CEO. Victoria corrected sharply. He is the face of a global empire. And you? You are a stain on that image. Look at yourself, Elena. You're a temp. A single mother with baggage and debt. Do you really think you fit in his world? Do you think the shareholders will respect a man who risks his career for a charity case? The words hit Elena like physical blows. Charity case. It was the same fear she had harbored all along, now weaponized and turned against her. He cares about me, Elena whispered, though her voice wavered. Victoria laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. He pities you. There's a difference. He feels guilty because he has everything and you have nothing. But pity isn't love, darling. And eventually, he will resent you. He will hate you for costing him his reputation. Do you want to be the reason Adrian Vane loses everything he built? Elena went cold. That was the one thing she couldn't bear. She could handle the insults. She could handle poverty. But she couldn't handle being the anchor that dragged Adrian down. He had saved her daughter. He had saved her. Destroying him in return would be the ultimate betrayal. What do you want? Elena asked, defeated. Disappear. Victoria said simply. Resign. Leave the city. Let the scandal die down. If you truly care about him, you'll let him go. Elena looked at the polished floor, seeing her own scuffed shoes reflected in the marble. Victoria was right. In this world, love wasn't enough. Optics mattered. Power mattered. And Elena had neither. Okay. Elena whispered. You win. It's not about winning. Victoria smirked, turning on her heel. It's about order. Elena walked back to her desk like a zombie. The office was buzzing with whispers, eyes darting away as she passed. Adrian was locked in the boardroom, fighting for his life, fighting for her. She couldn't let him do it. She didn't pack much. Just a photo of Lily she kept by her monitor. She took a piece of company letterhead and wrote 2 words, I resign. Then, she reached into her purse and pulled out the black card he had given her, the one she had never used since that night at the pharmacy. She placed it on top of the note. It was a heavy, metallic symbol of the bridge between them, a bridge she was now burning. She looked at his closed office door one last time. She wanted to run in, to tell him everything, to beg him to tell her Victoria was wrong. But she loved him too much to ruin him. Goodbye, Adrian, she whispered. She walked out of the building, not through the front doors where the paparazzi were already gathering, but through the service exit in the back. The rain had started again, a fitting backdrop for her exit. She took a cab to the school, her heart breaking with every mile. She picked up Lily early. Are we going on an adventure, Mommy? Lily asked, clutching her teddy bear, the one Adrian had bought. Yes, baby, Elena choked out, forcing a smile. A long trip, just us. They went to the apartment only long enough to pack 2 suitcases. Elena left the keys to the new SUV on the counter. She left the keys to the apartment. She left everything he had given her. She would start over, somewhere else, somewhere where she couldn't hurt him. They took a taxi to the bus station. The airport was too expensive, and trains required ID that could be tracked. The bus was anonymous. A bus was how people like her disappeared. The station was crowded, smelling of diesel and damp coats. Elena bought 2 tickets to a town 3 states away. The bus was boarding in 10 minutes. She sat on a hard plastic bench, Lily asleep in her lap. She checked her phone. 5 missed calls from Adrian, then 10, then 20. She stared at his name on the screen, her thumb hovering over the answer button. Every ring felt like a plea. Pick up, don't do this. But she couldn't. She powered the phone down, the screen going black, cutting the last line of communication. Travelers for Route 405 to Ohio, boarding at Gate 6, the intercom crackled. Elena stood up, hoisting her bag onto her shoulder and lifting the sleeping Lily. She walked toward the gate, each step heavier than the last. She handed her ticket to the driver. He tore it in half. She stepped onto the bus, moving toward a seat in the back. She looked out the window at the rain-slicked pavement. She had escaped. She had saved him. So why did it feel like she had just died? She thought she had escaped. She thought she was safe. But she underestimated Adrian Vane. What happens at the bus station isn't just a chase. It's a moment that will leave you breathless. The boardroom doors flew open with a force that cracked the plaster. Adrian stormed out, his tie loosened, his eyes blazing. He had decimated the board. He had told them, in no uncertain terms, that his personal life was off limits, and that anyone who leaked photos would be sued into oblivion. He had fought for her. He had won. Elena, he called out, striding toward her desk, ready to tell her the good news. Elena, it's handled. They backed down. Silence answered him. The desk was clean. Too clean. The computer monitor was dark. The chair was pushed in perfectly. And there, sitting in the center of the polished wood, was the black card. Beside it, a single sheet of paper. I resign. Adrian stopped dead. The air left his lungs. He picked up the card, the metal cold against his skin. It felt like a tombstone. No, he whispered. No, no, no. He spun around. Jessica! The VP scurried over, looking terrified. Sir? Where is she? Adrian demanded, his voice rising to a roar. Where did she go? I don't know. She left an hour ago. She took the service elevator. Adrian didn't wait. He sprinted to the security room, ignoring the shocked stares of his employees. He kicked the door open. Pull up the footage! The executive lounge. 1 hour ago. The security guard, trembling, rewound the tape. Adrian watched, his hands gripping the back of the chair so hard the leather tore. He saw Elena. And then he saw Victoria. He saw Victoria corner her. He saw the way Elena shrank back, the way she looked defeated. He saw the cruelty in Victoria's posture. Victoria! He snarled, a low, dangerous sound. He didn't need audio to know what had been said. She drove her away. She used her insecurity against her. Where did she go after she left the building? Adrian barked. Camera 4 shows her getting into a yellow cab, the guard said. Cab number 458. Adrian pulled out his phone. Track it. Now. I don't care what it costs. Find that cab. 5 minutes later, he was in his car, tearing through the rain-soaked streets. The GPS signal from the cab company had pinged the destination, the central bus station. Faster, he growled to his driver. Sir, the traffic. Drive on the sidewalk if you have to, Adrian yelled. He was vibrating with panic. She's running. She thinks she's saving me. She's going to disappear into the gray world she came from, and I'll never find her again. The bus station was a chaotic labyrinth of exhaust fumes and misery. Adrian's car screeched to a halt in the loading zone. He jumped out, not bothering with a coat, the rain instantly soaking his shirt. He ran into the terminal, his eyes scanning the departure boards. Route 405, departing at 3:15 p.m. He checked his watch. 3:14 p.m. He ran. He sprinted past the ticket counters, past the crying babies and the sleeping travelers. He burst through the doors to the loading bay just as the massive diesel engine of the bus roared to life. The doors were closing. The wheels were starting to turn. Stop! Adrian screamed, running into the path of the bus. Stop the bus! The driver slammed on the brakes, the air horn blasting an angry warning. Adrian didn't flinch. He walked to the door and pounded on the glass with his fist. Open it! Now! The driver, seeing a man in a bespoke suit looking like a vengeful god, opened the doors. Adrian climbed the steps, water dripping from his hair, his chest heaving. The passengers stared at him in stunned silence. He looked down the narrow aisle, and there she was, in the very back row. Elena. She was pressing herself against the window, trying to hide, clutching a sleeping Lily to her chest. He walked down the aisle. The silence was absolute, save for the hum of the engine and the drumming of the rain on the roof. Elena. She looked up. Her eyes were red and swollen. "Go away, Adrian," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please, just let me go. I'm doing this for you." "For me?" He stopped at her row. He looked at the shabby seat and the worn bag at her feet. "You think leaving me is for me? I'm ruining you," she sobbed softly, trying not to wake Lily. "Victoria said the stocks, your reputation. I'm a liability, Adrian. I'm just a temp with a mountain of debt. You need a queen, not a charity case." "Is that what you think this is?" Adrian asked, his voice breaking. He dropped to his knees in the dirty aisle. He didn't care about the suit. He didn't care about the audience. He cared about the woman in front of him. "You think I gave you that card because I pitied you?" He reached out and took her hand. It was cold. "You think I said call me because I wanted to be your bank?" "Yes," she whispered. "Because you're kind. Because you save people." "No," he said firmly. "I said call me, because I wanted to be the one you called. The only one. I didn't want you to call a bank. I didn't want you to call a doctor. I wanted you to need me. Because I need you." Elena stared at him, the tears freezing on her cheeks. "Why? Why me? I have nothing, Adrian. Look at us. I have nothing to give you." "You have everything I lack," he said intensely. "You have courage. You have warmth. You have a heart that stopped in the rain to save a stranger when you had nothing of your own. Elena, I have money. That's all I have. It's cold comfort. But you are the sun. You are the only real thing in my life." He looked at Lily, sleeping soundly in her arms. "And her. I don't want to just pay for her doctors. I want to read her stories. I want to teach her to ride a bike. I want to be the father who stays, not the one who leaves." "Adrian, don't leave," he begged, gripping her hand tighter. "I don't care about the board. I don't care about the stocks. If I have to burn Titan Corp to the ground to keep you, I will light the match myself. Just come home." The raw honesty of his words hung in the air. The contrast was stark. The dirty bus, the smell of diesel, the billionaire on his knees offering not his wallet, but his soul. Elena looked at him. She saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't saving her. They were saving each other. "You'd really burn it down?" she asked, a small, watery smile touching her lips. "Watch me," he said. She hesitated for one more second, the fear warring with the hope. Then she let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for 3 years. She nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "Take us home." Adrian let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He stood up and scooped Lily out of her arms, holding the child effortlessly against his chest. He reached down and pulled Elena up with his free hand. "Let's go," he said. They walked off the bus together, hand in hand, leaving the ticket to Ohio on the floor. As they stepped out into the rain, it didn't feel cold anymore. It felt like a baptism, a new beginning. 2 years later, the rain was falling again, but this time, it was a gentle sound, tapping rhythmically against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse. Inside, the air was warm, smelling of cinnamon and roasted coffee. There were no drafts here, no leaky faucets, no silence filled with anxiety. Elena sat in a plush armchair by the fireplace, a tablet in her lap. She wasn't filing invoices or fetching coffee. She was reviewing grant applications. The Umbrella Foundation, named, of course, for that rainy day in the park, had just approved housing for 50 more families. Titan Corp's profits were up, confusing the analysts who had predicted doom. But Adrian knew the truth. A leader with a purpose fights harder than a leader who just wants power. She looked up from the screen, her eyes drifting to the rug in the center of the room. Lily, now 7 and missing 2 front teeth, was building a towering castle out of wooden blocks. Adrian was sitting cross-legged on the floor beside her, wearing a faded t-shirt that had probably cost $5, a gift from Lily for Father's Day. The CEO of Titan Corp, the Wolf of Wall Street, was currently negotiating the placement of a dragon figurine on the castle parapet. "No, Daddy," Lily giggled, pushing his hand away. The dragon goes into the dungeon. He's in timeout. Timeout? Adrian feigned shock. But he's the guardian. He needs a view. He ate the princess's cookies, Lily stated firmly. Dungeon. Adrian chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound that vibrated with pure contentment. Fair enough. Dungeon it is. He placed the dragon carefully in the designated spot, then leaned over and kissed the top of Lily's head. You're a tough boss, kid. Elena watched them, her heart swelling until it felt like it might burst. The image of the bus station, the cold, the fear, the desperation, felt like a lifetime ago. Like a nightmare she had finally woken up from. Adrian hadn't just kept his promise, he had exceeded it. He hadn't just provided for them, he had integrated them into his very soul. He didn't work late anymore. He didn't brood. The darkness that had haunted him since his father's death had been chased away by the chaotic, messy, beautiful light of a family. Hey, Adrian said, catching her watching him. He smiled, and the crinkles around his eyes deepened. Are you okay over there? Better than okay, Elena smiled back. Just remembering. Don't, he said softly, knowing exactly where her mind had gone. That's the past. This is now. We need milk, Elena said suddenly, breaking the emotional intensity with domestic simplicity. And cookies. Apparently, the dragon ate them all. Adrian laughed, standing up and stretching. Well, we can't have a cookie deficit. Code up, ladies. Let's go. The grocery store was bright and busy. They didn't send an assistant. They didn't order delivery. Adrian insisted on these trips. He liked pushing the cart. He liked the normalcy of it, the grounding ritual of choosing cereal and arguing over which ice cream flavor to get. They were in the checkout line. Elena was unloading the cart, organic apples, milk, and the specific brand of cookies Lily demanded. Adrian was holding Lily, who was sleepy now, her head resting heavily on his shoulder. Elena glanced ahead. The woman in front of them was young, maybe 20. She had a baby strapped to her chest in a worn carrier. She was pale, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and endless worry. She was staring at the card reader, her lips moving in a silent prayer. Decline, the cashier said loudly, snapping gum. The young woman flinched. Can you try it again? I think the chip is dirty. I tried it twice, honey. Insufficient funds. The woman looked down at her cart. It wasn't full of luxuries. Diapers, formula, a box of pasta, flu medicine. Elena froze. The sound of the register beeping seemed to warp, transforming into the sound of coins hitting a counter. Clink, clink, clink. She was back there. She could feel the cold rain on her back. She could feel the shame burning her cheeks. She could feel the terror of not being able to save her child. She looked at the young woman's hands. They were shaking. The line behind them began to shift, impatience rising. A man sighed. Elena turned to Adrian. He hadn't moved, but he was watching the scene with narrowed eyes. He looked at the woman, then he looked at Elena. He didn't need to be asked. He didn't need an explanation. He saw the mirror image of their past standing right in front of them. He nodded. A single, sharp nod. Elena stepped forward. She didn't slam a black card down. She didn't make a scene. She moved quietly, slipping into the space beside the young woman. Excuse me, Elena said softly. The young woman looked up, terrified, expecting judgment. I have a coupon. Elena lied smoothly, sliding her own card into the reader before the cashier could protest. It covers everything. A corporate promotion. The machine beeped. Approved. The young woman stared at the screen, then at Elena. I don't understand. It's okay, Elena whispered, leaning in close, just as Adrian had done for her years ago. Go home to your baby. It passes. The storm always passes. She reached into her purse and pulled out a card. Not a business card for a CEO. A card for the Umbrella Foundation. Call this number tomorrow, she said. Ask for Elena. We can help with more than just groceries. The woman took the card, tears welling in her eyes. Thank you, she choked out. Thank you so much. Go. Elena smiled. The woman hurried away, clutching her bags like a lifeline. Elena turned back to Adrian. He was watching her with a look of such intense pride and love that it nearly knocked the wind out of her. He shifted Lily to one arm and reached out with his free hand. Elena took it. His hand was warm, large, and solid. He pulled her closer, wrapping his arm around her, creating that familiar, protective wall against the world. "You're good at that," he murmured, kissing her temple. "I had a good teacher," she replied. They walked out of the store and into the night. It was still raining, but they didn't run. They walked slowly, together, safe under the shelter of the life they had built. The coins were gone. The fear was gone. There was only the quiet, steady rhythm of two hearts beating in sync and the promise that next time, and every time after that, they would face the storm together. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe that even in the darkest storms, there is someone waiting to hold the umbrella, share it with a friend who needs hope tonight. Like this video so more people can find this moment of peace. And subscribe if you want more stories that feel like a warm hug on a cold day. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of your heart.